New Mexico Congresswoman Deborah Haaland is making history again by becoming the first Native American to be confirmed as a cabinet secretary. The U.S. Senate confirmed Haaland to lead the Department of Interior on Monday. In 2018, Haaland joined Kansas's Sharice Davids as one of the first two Native American women to serve in Congress. Yesterday, Haaland said goodbye and thanked her colleagues in the House for their support.
I thought I would have more time here, but we are called to service in different ways. Though I'm excited to become the first Native American cabinet secretary in history, I'm also sad to leave this chamber. As a twice elected member of Congress, it has been both a pleasure and privilege to serve alongside you in our quest to improve the lives of the American people.
Joining us now to talk more about this is CBS climate and energy reporter Kara Corti. Kara, hi, great to see you. So Deb Haaland's confirmation is not only historic, some would say long overdue. What has the response been from Indigenous communities across the nation?
Well, Native Americans I've spoken to, Tanya, have said that this is certainly a celebratory moment, but it absolutely is bittersweet. We heard Secretary Haaland say in that moment, she mentioned that she's a 35th generation New Mexican. And I want to focus in on that for a second. 35th generation. Now, if your family settled in Jamestown, the first English settlement on what is now America, that means you date back maybe 15 to 20 generations. And Deb Haaland's family has been on this land for 35 generations. And now in 2021, she's now Secretary of the Interior, which, among other things, oversees federal lands and also oversees the Bureau of Indian Management. So that's just a remarkable moment that has just occurred in American history. Now, Indigenous people I've spoken to, as I said, they're celebrating. I spoke to Valerie Sio, who is a Pueblo woman herself from the Laguna Pueblo, the same tribe that Deb Haaland is from. And when she spoke to me, Tanya, she was just in awe. It really was this amazing moment that she said she almost couldn't even believe is happening, to see a Native woman, a fierce, as she said, Pueblo woman, reach this level. And I want to focus on one moment in particular that Valerie brought up to me that kind of illustrates the resonance of this moment. Now, when Deb Haaland sat for her Senate confirmation hearing, the first words out of her mouth were not spoken in English. They were spoken in her native tribal language. And Valerie said to me that why that was so poignant was because Valerie has a 9-year-old son who she is teaching to speak the native Pueblo language of Keres. And she is teaching her son to introduce himself in that language, to use land acknowledgments as Deb Haaland did. She spoke to you from Washington, D.C., where I come to you today from. And Deb Haaland, in that hearing, in her native language, did the ancestral land acknowledgement that is customary in Native circles. She said that that I come to you today from land that was once the Nacotchtank, Anacostan, and Piscataway ancestral lands. And so that just kind of illustrates the moment of history, but also kind of this modern celebration of what's happening, the ramifications of this moment of representation for Native people, that for people like Valerie and for her 9-year-old son, she said, I can point to someone like Deb Haaland who is speaking her native language, and she tells her son, this is why we learn this language. This is why we learn our customs. You can be like Deb. And Valerie said this is just an incredible moment for her and her family.
It's so moving to hear those stories. So how will Deb Haaland's confirmation help bring about change in the relationship between Indigenous people and the federal government? What are some of the ways in which she can help shape that relationship going forward?
Well, just as I mentioned before, Tanya, that language is a huge part of culture and identity for Native people, especially Pueblos. So is the land. I spoke to Dr. Gregory Kaheti, who was the former director of the Native Studies program at the University of New Mexico. And he explained to me that when you're a Native person, the land is part of your spirituality. It's part of your identity. He said it's part of what makes us who we are. We are stewards of the land. And this area in New Mexico where Holland originates, many of these families are ranchers and farmers. They literally make their well-being off of the land, but culturally it's a huge factor of the Native identity. And when we look back at the horrendous and oftentimes violent history of the U.S. federal government and Native tribes in America, we know that so much of the tension has come from land rights, that the United States government has broken numerous land treaties, has turned their back on Native Americans and broken its word when it comes to respecting their sacred lands. So having Holland in this position, the Native people that I spoke to are hoping that some of those deep wounds can begin to be rectified and recognized and start to make progress. So that's really the hope, that not only is this an historic moment in a singular way with her nomination and her confirmation, but they hope that they hope that wrongs can be righted in her tenure.
All right. Well, Kara Corti, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.